Okay, so to continue on with the I believe statement about how I acquired Ritz, I made the I believe statement on a Friday and went up to the farm that evening. And on my way there, I had told myself, I need a sign. I'm a believer in signs. I don't believe a sign is something that you go and look for, like, you know, a prize in a video game to get yourself to the next level. I don't think that's what you do. You don't look for signs, because then you can believe anything is a sign. I think a sign has to come to you, and it has to be obvious that it's something you're supposed to look at, something you're supposed to listen to. So I asked for a sign and, said, show me a sign. Is this what I'm supposed to do? Is this where, no matter where I am financially, no matter where I am in my life, is this the right decision for me? Should I buy this young horse? It was calling to me, so this is why I was that far. This was something that I was feeling drawn to. I get up to the barn, and it's afternoon or evening, so the horses are already in for the night. And Ritz, being only 2 months old, was standing in the stall with his mommy. And and I went in just to watch. I didn't go into the stall with them. I wasn't an owner of a horse there, so I didn't have any rights to do that. But I did stand there, and I watched. And he did normal foal things, kind of walked around his mommy and stop and nurse for a minute, and then he'd go walk around mommy some more, and then he'd touch this and wiggle his nose on that, and really just show me a lot about his character, because a horse that is naturally independent, a horse that is naturally curious, is a horse that is less likely to be a herd-bound horse, is less likely to be a horse that you're always having to emotionally lift up all the time, doesn't have sense of security in any way. I don't want a horse that's not naturally secure, especially when they're with their mom, that they can be comfortable enough to explore their surroundings, be comfortable enough to touch everything that they come encounter with, because they want to see how to make it move, or if it makes a noise, or I want them to be a very explore type of horse, a horse that definitely explores their surroundings. It says a lot about their independence. So he's doing all that kind of stuff. So that's not my sign, though. That's not my sign. Like, I like what I'm watching, but it's not my sign. And I'm there probably 10, 15 minutes, and then all of a sudden I became the most interesting thing in the room. And not to the point to where he came over and visited with me, but to the point to where he started playing with me. And he started to do something that appeared to be a game of peekaboo. He would go from, the side of his mommy and pop his head out, and then put his head back onto the other side of his mommy. And I found that he was very, very, very responsive to laughter. Much like a little child who does something it's usually something they did that was like naughty or curse word or something, and then all the adults start laughing, and then of course the little kid does it again and again, because he knows that was laughter is a positive response to something that they did. Ritz responds very much to laughter, and I learned it that day. So, I'm giggling at him, and he's doing his little thing, and then he comes around the other side of mommy and pokes around her behind, and looks at me, and and he kind of did like a little leap in the air, and then came around the other side of her and did it again from the under her neck, across her chest, and was definitely playing with me. There's no question in my mind this horse was playing with me. He wasn't playing with his mom. I was the focus of his attention. Well, again, cute, thought it was very funny, was enjoying watching him, still not calling that my sign. he decided at one point that he was going to make it even more interesting. And he came around the back of his mom. And imagine I'm standing where you are, and Mom's hind end is here, and her head is there, and she's this way, and you're at the door of the stall. And all of a sudden, I don't see him. He's on the other side of Mom now. He pops his head between the back of her leg and her tail. So now his head's got her tail coming down one side and the back of her leg around the other side. And he pokes his head out and, flips up the tail, and he pokes his head out and he pops his head back in. And then he pokes his head out again and pops the tail up and pokes his head out again. And then he brings it back in. And then the next time he does it, he has this laughter in his eye. He knows he's funny. He knows that this is what's causing this, funny noise I'm making. He knows this is what's causing this joy. So he pops his head back out. He looks at me and he's got, like I said, he's got laughter in his eye, and he pops his head back out from behind her, steps out to where you can almost see his chest. You can see his whole neck and his head, and he flips his lip up in the air, and he kind of tilts towards me so I can see, all his teeth, his little tiny milk teeth, and he holds his head up in the air like, ha 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 ha. And we all know that, well, horse people know that when a horse flips their nose up in the air, it's usually because they've smelt something foreign to them or funny to them or whatever. But we've considered that laughter. You see a horse do that and you think that they're laughing. It's always been kind of dubbed laughter. And I was like, that's my sign. This little guy not only wanted to make me laugh, but I made him laugh because I was laughing. He knew he was funny. He knew he had me entertained. And to this day, he's 12 years old now, to this day, Ritz knows how to make people laugh. And if somebody's in my barn visiting, and I don't see where they are in the barn, I can hear them, but I don't know exactly where they are, I'm not paying attention, whatever. If they're laughing, I know who they're standing near. It's always obvious. It's Ritz is making somebody laugh. That was my sign. That was my sign. I knew then that I needed to have this little guy because he was so connected to me in that moment. We were having fun. He was doing something to make me laugh, and then, it kind of made him laugh too, So that was my sign. I drove home from there, a big smile on my face, and then, of course, pondering, what do I do? How am I going to do this? How am I going to buy this horse? I truly didn't think that part through because I truly was on the, no, this is a stupid decision, stupid idea to even be thinking about kind of side of the fence. And then now I'm on my way home going, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I got to figure out how to do it. How am I going to do it? So, of course, you go through your head anytime you want to buy something that is out of your financial means, you start to think, what do I have to sell? What do I have of any value that I can sell to make this possible? I'm not going to go ask anybody for money to buy a horse because then, of course, I got to figure out how I'm going to afford the horse on a monthly basis too, because I didn't have a barn, so I needed to know how I was going to afford him in a boarding facility and that kind of thing too. So what do I have of any value? Well, I look down at my steering wheel and I think to myself, I'm in the market for a new car. I'll sell my car. Now mind you, if I sold my car, I wouldn't have a car until, of course, I went out to get another car. But if I sold my car, I was going to be carless. Well, I made arrangements with the barn owner to park the car because the barn happened to be on a pretty busy, cut-through road. So a lot of people traveled that road during the day. And I had asked him if I could put my car for sale there and, and maybe just for a week or so to see if it sells, if I get any bites on it or whatever. Well, I'm not sure if I was helped to sell my car by the owner of the farm because it was in his interest as well that I sold my car, because then I'd buy this horse. Or if it just happened to be one of his friends said, oh, inquired about the car parked out in front. So a buddy of his buys my car. So he was there at the time that, you know, we exchanged money and title and et cetera, et cetera. And I literally took the money from the fellow buying my car, counted it out, handed it to the guy who owned the barn and at the time owned this little 2-month-old foal. And that was history. I bought myself a horse. They were already calling him Ritz because he was orange. And that's the funny thing. There's, you know, like, talk about wrong matches. First of all, I don't like chestnuts. It was never my color of horse. And I had no use for a Tennessee Walker. You know, like, what would I want a Tennessee Walker for? I'm from a jumper background. You know, Tennessee Walkers aren't known to be jumpers. Although they do try to promote the versatility of a Tennessee Walker, they're pretty much a trail horse. You know, a gaited animal is pretty much a trail horse, or, you know, show high-stepped horse. But I had no intention of teaching him how to be a gaited show horse, and I really wasn't that much into riding on trails, but for whatever reason, this horse had to become mine. So, sell my car, buy a horse. I made arrangements with the owner to board him there. I mean, obviously, while Ritz was still standing by his mom, I would need him to stay there. So, you know, worked out a board arrangement, and now I own a horse, and he's got a place to live. And one of my very favorite pictures of him, he was between 4 and 6 months old, and he was standing with his mom, and their heads were both up and over a fence, and, you know, he was stretched out to put his head over the gate, and she was, you know, holding her head over the gate. And it's easily one of my favorite mommy-son pictures. So if you ever see my logo, it's actually, I had the lady that did my logo, I had her digitally, that's a word, remove the halters from the picture, because she's a black horse and she was wearing a bright red halter and he was wearing a little leather halter, but I had her remove those from the actual picture. My logo is that picture, Ritz and his mom, Ritz being the closest image, mom being the background image. And even though I usually get the logo done on black, and she's a black horse, we offsetted her into a flat black color, so you can see her in my logo. Let's see, so that's how my logo came about, that's Ritz and his mom, and, you know, shortly after I bought him. And my favorite picture in the world. So, I don't remember how old he was when a group of us from the barn had decided to go to a horse auction in South Jersey. But I decided, you know, I'd always believed chestnuts looked great in green. And he needed to be dubbed up in green. Everything needed to be green. So, at this auction, it was also a tack auction, and that's really why we went. I don't think we went to look at horses. I mean, certainly I didn't. I just bought one. But, you know, I went for the experience and then also for the tack auction. You know, it was time to buy stuff. One of my famous sayings was, well, you know, one of the good things about buying a baby horse is that I have 2 years to acquire everything I need. Because, you know, I was out of horses, so I didn't have anything. I didn't even have a lead rope, let alone a saddle, any personal gear, whatever. So, we're at this tack auction, and if it's green, I'm bidding on it. To the point to where I bid on almost everything that was green, and total strangers behind me, something came up that was green, and it was too big, or, you know, just wasn't suitable for my needs. And the people behind me tapped me on the shoulder, and they go, "Don't you want to bid on that? It's green." The only really funny thing that happened in that experience was my girlfriend was sitting next to me, and she got so into the raising your number thing, you know, and bidding on everything. She was the only one, my girlfriend was the only one bidding against me for things that I wanted. So all she was doing was jacking up the price. But it was kind of funny. Like, she just was in the moment, and we had a good time. And it wasn't even right away that I realized what was going on either. I think she thought she was bidding to try to get it, so in case I didn't get it, she could be the one that got it. But it turned out she was really the only one bidding with me. Bought him everything green, everything green. So fast forward a little bit, you know, I did a lot of ground training with him. Obviously, he's a baby. I did a lot of training with him next to his mommy. I did a lot of drawing exercises with him, meaning I would invite him to come away from his mom and accept me as, not a surrogate mom, but accept me as a good leader too. And I was able to get him pretty darn far away from his mom, you know, in his own free will before mom got upset. You know, mom would get a little worried and call for baby, and, you know, of course then he has to listen. That's mom. But I could really get him to start to, you know, kind of drift away from her and start to get more connected to me. So this was still while he was with his mom. He was 10 months old when I agreed to wean him. I really did want him to stand next to his mom for a long time. It really was very important to me. So when he was 10 months old, it was established we're going to wean this little guy. And at that time, too, my mother fell ill. And I had to go out to Ohio to care for her before she passed. And while I was gone, you know, my girlfriend took pictures. And Ritz had his first winter while I was gone. And when I came back, you know, I was gone for 6.5 weeks. It seemed like forever for a lot of reasons, but it was, you know, I got to come home to my then I guess 11-month-old foal. He was probably closer to 9 months when we weaned him. But anyway, so it was a beautiful day in January, and everybody was at the barn. I was feeding Ritz an extra grain. I was feeding him Purina Jr. in addition to the food that they were supplying as part of my board. But for whatever reason, I was starting to get these weird accusational notes about touching the grain and you know, don't feed your horse extra grain and stuff like that. So I don't know if that was attributed to my having checked on occasion to see if we were definitely feeding grain that didn't have mold. You know, we weren't in, like, you know, the top-notch facility, so there were rodents and things, and I worried about moles and rodent feces and stuff like that. So I often looked to make sure that the grain was, you know, healthy. So that may be they may have booby trapped the door to the grain bin or something to see that somebody's been in there. You know, I don't know. But so I got these accusational notes about feeding my horse more food, or it was like a general statement, but I knew who they were meaning it for because I was pretty much the only other person that went there. And then on this beautiful day that we all decided we're gonna, you know, everyone was riding. It was a beautiful January day, and we were all gonna get on our horses and enjoy our horses for the day. And I had permission, prior to going to Ohio, I had permission to ride Ritz's mom, Emily. I had permission. I asked the owner. And on this particular day, it was a good day to do that, right? You know, I don't think I had ridden her yet before that, and this was a beautiful day to do that. So I did as everybody else. I tacked up a horse and wanted to play, you know, and I rode her back and forth on the fence line on the main, you know, up by the road, and I probably rode her for 10 minutes, you know. I didn't ride her for very long. She was gated. I've taught Ritz as he grew into a saddle horse, as he grew into a riding horse, I taught him to trot when he's ridden, and he can gait out in the field all he wants, but I didn't want him to gait while I rode him. So I taught him that when you're ridden, you trot. So Mama, which is what we called her even though her name was Emily, she gated. And it felt awkward. It was weird. And even at the canter, I don't think she even understood how to canter properly. Or she might not even understood how to canter at all. And so I had, finished riding her, and I think I mentioned to the lady there that I guess she was considered the trainer of the farm. She was working with one of the lessee's daughter's horse, and she worked with my girlfriend's horse, and she worked with the other owner's horse, so I'm going to say she was the trainer at the barn. I talked to her about how weird the gait was, and who knows, maybe she thought I was riding a lame horse. The horse wasn't lame, I don't know. I don't know what the conflict was. There was a conflict. Not to my face, but I then got a note. I was starting to get these lovely notes. I then got a note saying, you are not authorized to touch other people's horses, and certainly not to ride them, and whatever. And I was like, I knew who that was meant for. Again, it was another general statement, but we know who it was meant for. And I was like, man, I had permission, but somebody was just trying to cause me some grief there. So I think it was mutually understood that I was having a harder time there now, and Ritz was weaned. So I left from reading that note angry, knowing somebody was trying to have a negative impact on my stay there, knowing somebody was trying to make my existence in this farm a bad thing, a bad experience. So Ritz was weaned, let me get him out of there. So on the way home, I turned down this other road that was very near my home. I was with my son, and I saw that it was a barn. Your eyes open up to things when you drive down roads, and you're like, I always use that road as a cut-through road, but I never really realized there was a barn right there. So I pulled in, and that's something I don't normally do. I don't normally drive up onto people's property, even if it looks like a public barn. And I pulled in and got names and numbers and asked around, who do I need to call? Well, this was his parents'